I think I was in a particularly cranky mood. I wrote a lot of really bitchy notes about this episode.
And that's what we should fade up on. That should be like the introduction, just to ease the listener in.
That's right.
Just so
that's
you
right.
know, you're getting angry, Jack, today.
You're getting cranky, Jack, and I don't know why, but that's what you're getting. Hi, everybody. My name is Jack Packard. Peoples here for the Escapist.
I'm Darren Mooney, One World, apparently, also here for the Escapist.
I'm KC Wosu, one Captain Falcon reference. I called it. I was right.
This week we are going to be talking about the final episode of Falcon Winter Soldier, aka One World, One People, aka The Ways and Means of Muddled Themes, aka Bureaucracy Bends to the Centrists' Scorn. These are all my thoughts right out from the beginning. Hello and welcome. This is A Marvelous Escape. Yeah, so overall to start the conversation, it's a little muddled. As we get to the end, I feel like they kind of had a really great thesis statement, a really great theme, and then just kind of punted it a little bit, just punt it down the line. Like someone else will really put a button on this later.
No,
I
kind of agree.
Sorry,
While I will say, I really like there were kind of highs in this episode that really hit, like they were like very well done. And like I personally like really appreciated some of the moments in it that we'll talk about a little later. But as a whole, yeah, this was kind of lackluster, I guess, in terms of a finale. Like my biggest gripe, I think, are just the big ending action set pieces. Like I really thought a lot of the fighting and action moments just weren't that good. And this is kind of a tangent, but I don't know where else to fit this in. I read an article recently basically making fun of Sam Wilson for being a bad fighter. Like almost every fight he's had throughout the entirety of the MCU, he's pretty much lost in.
He lost to Ant-Man.
He lost to Ant-Man. Like it was just like his biggest embarrassment. And I got into an argument with a friend who was like, you won't be saying all that once you see the finale. Like I guarantee you, like they'll make him like badass in the finale. And nope, he ran from the Leaper. He ran. He was losing that fight and he just jumped out a window rather than finish that man off. And now we don't know where Baltrock is.
Well, can we acknowledge that like Baltrock the leader, like he was like a background detail in the Winter Soldier. He's not a supervillain. He doesn't have a cool costume. He doesn't have any particular moveset. He doesn't have any cool gadgets that he uses. He's just a guy that Steve Rogers fought one time on a boat, and now he's apparently like Sam's arch nemesis,
right,
who like bookends the season. I feel like that's a really damning indictment of Sam more than Baltrock. It's like, yes, I am back. And you really expect Sam to say, wait, what? Who are you? I didn't realize this was a thing. I didn't know that we were doing this.
I don't like you that way, Batroc. I mean, like, I appreciate that you're sending it my way, but, you know, it's not mutual. It's not a mutual relationship.
I mean, maybe recurring foe, arch nemesis is a bit strong. I don't think we're there yet.
Right. No, and I hear that, and yes, like, I think they're trying to find that balance because Sam is very adamant about not being a super soldier, right? And so it's like they want to make sure that when he fights, it's realistic in some sort of way. And so I think they are having him be a little bit of a punching bag. But yes, that man loses a lot.
How messed up is it that, like, of the terrorists who take over the GRC tower, it's the one guy without superpowers they send after Captain America? It's like, no, Batroc, he's just hanging around. He's the only one of the set of us who can't throw him through a building. He'll take care of Sam. He's on it. He's got this.
I mean, granted, he was up to the task. It's just he didn't count on Sam running away. Because that's what he did. He's like, you know what? I need to take care of something else. I'm going to jump out this window. And luckily, I have Wakandan wings.
I admired, like, the Aquaman specificity of the final fight, where it's like, look, we've got a superhero, he's got wings, he flies, that's literally all that he does. Let's present him with a problem in the final episode that can only be solved by flying. Again, very similar to the opening action sequence. It's like, he's got a very specific range and we're going for it. There's a moment where he's like, Buck, you got this. And he's like, no, Sam, you're the one of the pair of us who flies. This is by definition your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, No, and I want to talk about that because, like, as I'm watching this, and I did feel overall a little lackluster, not just in the storytelling, but also, like KC said, in the action sequences. And I feel like there were some like basic production and writing things that they got swapped around. And so I feel like they got some of the action sequences backwards as far as like setup and payoff is concerned. You know, as an audience, what we are hoping for, and I guess as writers and as directors, what you're hoping for is the audience is figuring stuff out along with your hero. You never want the audience to be ahead of your hero because that makes your hero look dumb. And so we have this sequence in which Sam is chasing after the helicopter, and Sam gets an idea, right? He gets an idea going, oh, I wonder if anyone on that helicopter can fly this helicopter. Bing, I got an idea. So he, Red Wing scans the helicopter, and as it turns out, sure enough, someone is a pilot. How great. My plan will work. But that's backwards, because as soon as he said, I hope there's a pilot on here, the audience knew that, okay, yeah, there's going to be a pilot on there.
Well, I mean, also the fact that like Sam has one big move that he uses when fighting helicopters that we like saw in the first episode, which is he swoops through the helicopter and picks the dude up. It's a very specific like skill set. But so it's like, gee, I wonder how he's going to get that guy out of a helicopter. Is he going to do the one thing that we know that helps him get guys out of helicopters?
But that's okay in my book if we were following along with Sam. So like literally all you had to do in that scene was Red Wing scan, like let's see who's in the helicopter. Wait, wait a minute, this person has a military background. I have an idea. And then we are like along the journey with Sam. Yeah. If he does the same move again, that's fine. Like that's his move. He flies. It's fine. But like we were ahead of Sam in the game, and that's what kind of makes the action sequences seem lackluster, is because we go, okay, yeah, the lady's gonna fly the plane. Yeah, okay, come on, just get to it now. And so
I mean, it's that, and also like his big battle was against a helicopter. Like the guy was fighting him with the rollerblades and such. Like this is your big encounter,
right? Yeah,
it's just weak.
And the other helicopter as well, the bit where he rams the helicopter and uses the other helicopter as a projectile. I feel like it's very much leaning into a very narrow definition of what Sam Wilson Falcon is good at. It's like air stuff. Like next season we're going to do planes and parachutes, air balloons, hot air balloons. Ooh. I want the villain to get away in a hot air balloon next year. That's kind of like my big pitch.
Ooh, I like that. But like, I think that sequence could have very easily taken place like in a road chase. That could have been a little more exciting. Cars weaving in and out of stuff, and Sam flying along with the car. You still get to use the flying power. You don't need a helicopter.
And you could do it like in a different landscape, because like the thing with the first one is that it takes place in a big like ravine canyons near the Libyan border. So it's big open spaces, and he's swooping and he's flying.
Yeah.
Do it in like with a car in New York, and suddenly he's weaving between buildings and he's going over and under stuff. He's got to go on over underpasses or walkways and stuff like that. He's got to nip across streets. Like you can do interesting things geographically with that, but instead it's like, no, we're going to take the helicopter over the bay. So there's a big open space and there's a helicopter again. And it's like, I don't know. I mean,
well, no, but then you also get into like, so like the problem when action sequences are boring is you start thinking about stuff that isn't necessarily important. Like, the Flag Smashers' plan was to kidnap all of these people to use them as hostages to negotiate with, right? Then why are they splitting up their hostages between two armored cars and a helicopter? Why not take them all in armored cars or all in helicopters? Like you start getting into the minutia of their plan, and that's not what you want to be thinking about during an action sequence. Like, why does this guy who is took a super soldier serum and is a bruiser, he knows how to fly a helicopter really well. That's amazing. How did he learn how to fly a helicopter? Who is this guy? Like, I shouldn't be thinking about this while there's an awesome action sequence happening.
Fair enough.
Yeah. One of my very, very first notes, and I feel really bad about this, but I figured out why it was, is that I was a little underwhelmed with Sam's costume.
It looks pretty comics accurate, right? Like I think that's what they were going for. They wanted to look exactly like how he did in the comic books. And the same. I felt like, that's what they chose to do. Like it's not the worst thing, but like it was kind of a dark scene, and I think like in like broad daylight, it will actually look a little hokey. Like it'll look as kind of ridiculous as Steve's first costume did. Like when you look back on it now, like Steve does look kind of ridiculous in that first Avengers Captain America suit. Even though it's nice looking, it would play great at a convention, I'm sure, but it just doesn't kind of fit that real world kind of look that the later suit he did. I was hoping he'd get like some sort of black and silver Wakanda-ish looking get up, but
Well, the problem is though the white. Like the problem is like it's as you mentioned, it's a very gritty, very realistic scene. It's lit very atmospherically. It's inside buildings. He's getting thrown through helicopters. He lands underwater and he's driving. He's wearing white. If you're wearing white doing that stuff, it's gonna quickly turn to gray, just like in basic fashion sense. Like that was kind of my big problem, and a lot of it was like it felt very puffy around the shoulders, which I choose personally to interpret as another reference to the 80s-ness of the show. Because it's like big poofs. Because it's got big puffy shoulders. Was I the only one who picked up on that? And like it's really puffy around the kind of chest area.
I think they were trying to make him look a little. They were trying to bulk him a little bit.
But I chose to take that as like a nice acknowledgement of yes, we know this is an 80s TV show basically, so we're going all in on it. But yeah, no, I agree with you guys. The costume is like it doesn't fit with the aesthetic of the show. Like I feel like if the set piece if they swapped the opening and closing set pieces, so if the closing set piece of the series took place in broad daylight, perfectly lit, blue skies, him wearing that costume would be a bit less incongruous because it would be cast against like the bright colors of the orange of the desert and the blue of the sky. So him wearing bright blue and wearing white wouldn't be a problem.
Sure.
The issue is you're doing it in supposedly New York City / Atlanta at night,
right,
and you're throwing him in the grungy bay of the Hudson. And it's like
well, my other problem of it was purely like technical, which is like this was the outfit reveal. This was their big like showcase victory lap. And if you watch the editing of that sequence, it really threw me off because at first we see a full body Sam with the wings out and he's doing this awesome action pose, but they cut away seconds later. And then, he's in the building and they do a push-up and then it's just a head and shoulders shot where we don't even get to see the full outfit. All you see is the puffy shoulders. And it's like, I want to reveal, show me, give me the page. What do they call that, Darren? Like a
splash page.
Splash page. Thank you. Like, give me the splash page image of him with the wings out, doing an awesome pose. Slow. Get Zack Snyder in there. Like, give me that.
Yeah, Zack Snyder would
just for that one shot.
Just for that one shot, so I can take in how awesome he is. Then, if the outfit looks weird in real life, like that's fine. I have the awesome image burnt into my head already. So yeah.
Well, even do things like have the shield show up first, show his hands, have him putting on the costume, but in intense close-ups. You're like, wait, I'm seeing the hands, I'm seeing the gloves, I'm seeing the boots. What does this all look like together? Why am I just seeing the back of his head? What does the front of this thing look like? Build anticipation. But there's so much happening in that sequence because I think like Sharon shows up directly beforehand. It's like, oh, surprise, Sharon is here. And it's like, oh, by the way, I have a cool new costume. And it's like, no, that's not how you structure this. The structure is, surprise, I've got a cool new costume. Also, Sharon's here. But mainly this.
Right. And so, like, I feel like a lot of the technical aspects were off about this episode, which should have been the victory lap episode. This should have just been a fun action showcase, little button up on the themes at the end. But yeah, everything felt a little off.
No, you're right. I also was a little disappointed in that this is Wakandan tech, and they pretty much just gave him the exact same stuff he had before. Like, what did they add other than, I guess, like an extra Red Wing? Like, did he have 2 of those things before?
No,
maybe, I don't know.
But,
yeah, so I guess they just gave him a backup one.
And we assume his wings are vibranium.
Better now, vibranium.
Yeah.
But I mean, no one even says that to confirm it, Right. Like maybe Wakanda was like, well, we're just doing this as a favor. We're not going to use any of our vibranium. Like, you don't know. It could be steel, like, John Walker's shield or something.
But to be fair, it does withstand a helicopter hit. Which again feels very, specific to his power set. I feel like the Wakandan sat down, they're like, yeah, it needs to be able to withstand, not a plane, not a jet, not an airplane, not a car, a helicopter. He's definitely going to get hit with a helicopter.
That actually that's pretty funny headcanon in my mind now, because now I'm thinking the Wakandans, in trying to make a suit for a Captain America, really went like OD gaudy. Like, this is what the Americans like, right? Just big stars and stripes.
Is it tacky enough? Make it tackier. Make it tacky.
Actually, now it all makes sense. Like, what do Americans like? Oh, they like really big, gaudy, ugly stuff. Yeah, big flag.
Yeah, like that,
okay.
that now makes sense to me.
I think we can get another 10% in the shoulder pads.
Ooh, yeah.
Shiri there with like the little graph, and she's kind of pushing up the dial. It's like
Make them bigger. I said bigger, damn it.
I mean, he does have to carry the nation on his shoulders, so hey.
That's great. That's great. All right. So where to now?
But before we move off the action sequence, just one thing that really jumped out at me, and again, I know we mentioned it last week, the sense in which there have been reshoots and edits and a lot of post-production done on this show. One of the things that really jumped out at me this week is that it feels increasingly clear that, like, Carly murdering those civilians at the end of the second episode was very much something that was added in post to make sure the audience didn't feel too sympathetic to her. Because you have a big moment in this episode where she's like, well, you know what? We were going to use them as hostages, these people who were going to, like, send troops into refugee camps. But you know what? If it comes down to it, we may have to kill them. And everybody else around her is like, whoa! This is not what we expected, And like, there's a really awkward moment where she's like, one world, and it's like, I'm not sure we're on board with this. It's like, dude, she just killed innocent office workers 4 weeks ago. I feel like this is like, if anything, a step down from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, that was a moment where I really felt like, yep, we have done a lot of reshoots in this. And also like little details like the fact that like John Walker's costuming scene at the end, the US agent scene, he gets dressed in like the US Senate committee room, which feels very much like we had Julia Louis-Dreyfus for a day. We were using this set already for a lot of reshoots or exposition or pickups or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we guess we'll use this scene and Julia Louis-Dreyfus on it. Yeah, like you mentioned that the execution of this episode and it feeling a bit choppy. It definitely does, and I really felt the sense of there are lots of reshoots and there was a lot of post work done on this episode, I think.
Yeah, and that's hard, and like it's definitely understandable. Pandemic, switching stuff around, like we all get that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you end up with a product that feels chopped up, and like anyone will say, the best editing is the things you don't see. And when
it's the invisible art, I think, isn't that what they call it?
Say that again.
Editing is the invisible art, is what they call it.
Absolutely, and you can just feel all of the pieces not quite fitting together. And underwhelming action sequence. Even when we have, a super soldier fight, we have US agent, we have Winter Soldier versus a bunch of nameless super soldiers. We should be having some fun there, and we're not really.
They're just kind of dogpiling, despite the fact he has the same abilities that they have and is like a trained US Marine soldier and was one of the best physical specimens in the world before he got the serum. It feels like he's theoretically physically on a level playing field with them. Mm-hmm. So theoretically, it's the same as him meeting a bunch of teenagers who like throw a beer bottle at him. That's the equivalent of like what we should be doing here. It should be like Taken level stuff should be happening, but they just kind of dogpile on him, and it's odd. It's very odd.
And the same with Winter Soldier, someone who was quite literally the world's best assassin, trained in 1,000 versions of martial arts, who has not only a super soldier, but has a vibranium arm. You should be wiping the floor with these people.
With these kids.
Yeah, like they're all just idealistic freedom fighters. Like
Zemo's butler does a better job.
It's all just kind of like it feels like thrown together, like all the action stuff, and like the same spills over into like just the theming. And Darren was right, like the way like they positioned the Flag Smashers to kind of just take the role of the bad guy. It's not what I thought they would do. Like maybe it's something that did change over time, like with reshoots and whatnot, but like it really just felt like bad. I don't know what other word to really like. It felt bad. Yeah. Like Carly like remained sympathetic in her portrayal, but all of her actions just betrayed everything, like her relation, like the fact that Sam and Bucky were willing to like talk to her, just betrayed the fact that she was like just killing people left and right. Honestly, like she set a whole truck on fire full of people. It's like, that's not really redeemable, Harley.
Yeah, well, I mean, like when you say that, but like John Walker murdered somebody like by bashing their chest in and was filmed doing it, and he gets a weird like redemptive arc here.
Yeah,
like there's a little moment where he's like, "Let me save these people and prove I'm a good man." And like by the end of it, like Falcon and Winter Soldier are like, "Yeah, I guess he's with us now." Bucky, you go make sure he doesn't smash anybody's chest in. But other than that, it's all good. Like he gets a little stinger at the end where he quotes Lincoln and pats Bucky on the shoulder, and it's like, "Oh, look at these two awkward buddies." Sure, he's a little more into it than Bucky is, but this is like not a dude who murdered somebody with Steve's shield a couple of episodes ago.
To be fair, a white man failing up is very believable.
It absolutely is, but it feels like the episode isn't. It feels like the episode isn't quite cognizant of that. Like I did while I was watching it, I was thinking, yeah, this is very white privilege. White law enforcement official caught brutally murdering somebody on camera and ends up with a nice redemptive arc at the end. I'm like, yeah, this isn't unbelievable. That's not my problem with it. My problem with it is the show. The show is kind of on board with the redemption because you get the little scene at the end with his wife where he's like, "Honey, look at us. Isn't it great? I'm U.S. agent. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
look at how cool we are."
Like there's no sense of dread attached to that scene at all, right? It's not like, oh, this is going to be a new darker chapter. It's like, oh, I did a bad thing that one time, remember? Well, we don't really remember, but now the pressure's off because I don't have to be Captain America, but I still get to be a superhero, which is good, right? Everyone's happy.
Yeah. Thank God this is behind me. Yeah. Thank God this is behind me is the thing to say. I got over this.
Right. Well, and you contrast that with the way in which the Flag Smasher arc was buttoned up, which was a loving speech by Sam telling all the bureaucrats, "Listen, bureaucrats, we got to do something about this, and I'm going to tell you all about it." Oh, geez, that was bad. That was
without any specifics, though. Like the thing that really bugged me about that scene, right, is that like throughout the Captain America movies, right, Steve Rogers, whenever Steve Rogers senses there's anything resembling injustice in the world, what does he do? He casts off his role as Captain America. He goes out there. He dismantles the entire system. He has gunships firing at each other out of the sky. He decides to break his buddy out of custody and go on a roaring rampage of revenge to go take care of the Winter Soldiers by himself because that's how Captain America rolls. And it feels really awkward that like the entire arc of like Sam in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or we'll talk about the end in a moment because I like the correction to Captain America and the Winter Soldier. That was a big thumbs up for me. But like the whole point of like Sam's arc here is like, well, look, Sam understands that there are people dying in these camps and people suffering in these camps, and that kids are starving and that disease outbreaks are happening, and that nobody really cares about them. So what is Sam going to do to fix that? Well, he's going to give a stern talking to. That's what he's going to do. And he will shame them into acting. And like the really awful thing about the episode is that like at the end, like the news reports are like, and the GRC have announced that they are going to be reviewing their process of resettlement. And it's like, that's not a solution. They're not closing the camps. They're not letting people into the country. They've just decided not to send armed soldiers into the camps to presumably brutally murder lots of these people while forcing them out. It's very similar, again, not to get too political, but it's very similar to the argument that, well, look, you know, on November 9th, 2020, everything was perfect. Like January 22nd, 2021, everything just got fixed. We don't have to double check on this stuff. We don't have to ask what was happening with all that shady stuff that was happening beforehand. Once January 22nd hit, it was just perfect. There's a real sense of that at the end of the episode where it's like, well, thank God Sam gave a speech. Right?
Well, I will say you're absolutely right. Like 100% right. The way they frame Captain America, like Steve Rogers Captain America, as being a hero by breaking out and like disobeying the law or the superiors to get what needs to be done. It's crazy, legitimately crazy how the Black Captain America, Sam Wilson, can't do that. He can't break the law to get the job done, right? He has to work within the confines of it. And I'm not necessarily upset that they chose to do that, because in reality, that's the option that the black man has to choose. Like, you can't just go on a rampage because you're not going to be forgiven for it, i.e. Isaiah Bradley, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So like Sam does have to thread that needle. He has to play that middle ground because he's a black Captain America. And that makes sense to me in like a weird way. Like, I don't like it, but it makes sense. So
But
like I can kind of forgive it for that. But yeah, it's not a happy end. And I think and again, I think that's the point. That's why I wasn't so down on him giving the speech. I did think the speech was hokey, but it makes sense in the sense that, look, and he even says it, like, I'm a black dude, like wearing the Stars and Stripes. Like, come on now. Like, this is what I have to do to make this work. Like, I have to talk to you guys, because if I like, you know, if I go all Steve Rogers and like employ people to go,
remember Iron Man? Like, in the middle of Iron Man, Tony Stark flies off to the Middle East to brutally murder a bunch of terrorists and then just flies back and nobody cares. It's no big deal. It's no biggie. And Sam's like, you know what? You should probably like not send in soldiers to the detention camps. And they're like, really? And he's like, well, let me explain it to you in great detail. I'm going to talk you through this.
Like him having the mantle of Captain America means at the very least that those people will listen to him. And that's the power that he's, using, right? His power of speech. And then it's meant to mirror like civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not a bad thing, mind you, but I do feel two minds about it, because at the end of the day, like, the powers that be would prefer if the people who are angry or dissatisfied would talk first rather than act. You know what I mean? Like, they prefer it that way. If Captain America's gonna be black, let him talk to everybody and set that example rather than being the radical that Steve Rogers was, because he has his whiteness to protect him.
And see, that's the part of the way they buttoned up like the Flag Smasher thing that really upset me, because like basically the show is painting the Flag Smashers as like, these kids wanted change. They just went too far. They disrupted too many things. But of course, if they didn't disrupt anything, no one would have listened. Nothing would have
changed. like nothing
at all
would have changed.
The only reason that Sam knows about the camps is because he was trying to stop Carly from stealing the vaccine, presumably to help sick people in the camps. Like,
right.
This is, and again, sorry, this is Darren getting on his high horse, and I apologize to listeners and everybody for that.
Get up there, the saddle's ready.
It is. It's all warm and it's kind of comfortable. I've got a groove in there already because I've been doing it so often. But like, one of the things that I love about like Captain America comic books is that they, and again, you get all the people online who are like, oh my god, they're making it political. It's like, the dude's called Captain America, first of all. Second of all, he was introduced punching Hitler a year before America entered the war, when it was like incredibly unpopular to do so. But throughout his history, like, Captain America comics have always been like, well, let's actually ask uncomfortable questions about America. And like, things like in 1979, he was fighting like the Ku Klux Klan that had a clone of him as a blonde-eyed, blue-haired, was it the master director, in case you don't get the subtext there. Oh yeah, this was the 1950s Captain America, in case you don't get the subtext there as well. In this, like, during the height of Watergate, Steve Englehart had him like witness Richard Nixon blow his own brains out while the Secret Empire, the original Secret Empire storyline is like, it's a lot, but it goes for it. It goes for it unapologetically. And even more recently, think of things like Ta-Nehisi Coates' big run on Captain America, where like the Red Skull is now an alt-right YouTube icon, which has obviously upset all of the usual suspects. But like, at least, like, he has what's it? 10 rules for living, I think, is one of his videos, but we're not going to get into that. But the thing is that like, they're saying something, and they're saying something aggressive, and they're understanding that like the history of Captain America is tied up in this idea of America as a liberal democracy that fights fascism, and that being an essential part of American identity going back to the Second World War. And if I can be frank, one of the things that really kind of bugs me about the MCU is that like, Captain America doesn't really fight Nazis at all. He doesn't really fight fascists at all. Even in, like, the first Avenger, like, the Red Skull kills more Nazis than Captain America does. The Red... Yeah, he does, because he invites them to his lair, and they're like, the Fuhrer will never stand for this. He's like, oh, well, I've moved beyond Nazism. And it's like, I don't feel like you're doing a World War II movie and you move beyond Nazism. I feel like Nazism is enough. I feel like that's the level.
Yeah.
But like even throughout, like the whole thing is that like at the climax of like the first Avenger, the Red Skull's like, I have seen the future, Captain. There are no flags. And it's like, no, that's not what Nazism is. Nazism is not anti-nationalism, just so we're clear. That's a very big misconception you have there. But like that's my big problem, is that like they built this show and it's like, well, what are people really afraid of? And it's like young people protesting about things that we should probably fix anyway. And it's like maybe you could just like move past the young people protesting and just like have him engage with the things that we should fix anyway. Maybe that's where the story is. Maybe that's where the drama lies. Anyway, sorry, that I'm gonna get off my high horse.
No, you make a good point. But as a counterpoint, like, is this the show that should do that? Like, it's a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility to put on like a Marvel show.
Yeah.
So like, I can't fault them for like tiptoeing around it. Like going as far as they did up until this point, I still kind of commend them for it. You know?
I mean, I've been down on it, but I should acknowledge, like, this went much further than I expected it to. I know we talked about in previous episodes. The show went much further than myself, Jack, and I think Casey as well, even expected it to go in these things. And, like, continuously in these episodes, we've been like, they actually went there. They had, like, a blonde white man, like, choking Sam, shouting, "I'm Captain America" at him, which is, like, one of the most striking images in pop culture in 2021, I would argue. So, yeah, all those criticisms come with a caveat of, yes, they did much more than I expected them to. Not as much as I would want, but more than I expected, if that makes sense.
Right, because at the end of the day, like, for this finale to have really, like, knocked it out of the park, it would have solved racism, right? Like, that's the only possible conclusion, right?
Fair point.
So it's fine that it's lackluster. Like it literally couldn't have done anything else, because otherwise it's giving you the answer to the question that everyone has been struggling with since the country's been founded, right?
Fair point.
So
fair point.
Yeah,
I'll give it a break on that regard. It's still lackluster because it doesn't have the answers that we were hoping it would after it touches on all of these topics. And like it can't possibly have those.
And it's like it is trying to do a balancing act, because like it's a superhero show, so you need a villain, and your villains need to be kind of understandable, but it's also a superhero show that's dealing with topical issues like race, like police, like how different nations talk to each other, which is in itself super wibbly wobbly and not finished, like you said. So like they want to add all of this, and that unfortunately adds to this feeling that we don't just give me a villain. You can have all of this, but then also a villain who's like, that's definitely the bad guy, and I'm happy when the bad guy is defeated. You can do all of that.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's really weird that, like, Carly becomes this irredeemable monster who wants to burn
like
some people
that
alive
felt wrong,
in order to destroy. No, but, like, it's not that Carly becomes this irredeemable monster, but it's like, so the show has these two extremes, and if you want to get political, it's like the anarchist left is Carly, and the far-right nationalism is John Walker, and it's really weird that the show's end thesis statement is, yeah, but, like, Carly is an irredeemable monster who wants to burn people alive in order to buy time to escape. But John Walker, on the other hand, all he did was crush somebody's chest with his shield. He's fine. He'll figure himself out in the end. It'll all work itself out. Don't worry about that.
Right?
Yeah, him not facing kind of any consequence at all.
And apparently, like, Sam and Bucky being okay with him.
Right.
It does feel right. It feels true. But, like, Sam and Bucky being okay with him is, like, that's the weird... Like, I wouldn't mind if he didn't face consequences, but it's the weird, happy, fun ending we get where he and Bucky are, like, standing with their arms folded, listening to Sam, and, like, you get this reaction shot of John Walker going, look, maybe he's not such a bad guy. Maybe he's listening to Sam. Maybe he's understanding. Maybe he's, like, figuring some stuff out, although he's not going to articulate it, so we don't have to deal with that, you know?
Right.
I don't know, sorry.
No, that's very true. Like, have John Walker help out in the end, because, but still be a bad guy. And then Sam and Bucky, we'll get you next time, but thanks for helping us this time. Oh, we don't like you. And that's fine. Like, that's how that should be. Or do that, like, go full full whole hog with the Flag Smashers and just have them be pure anarchists, and then we have a bad guy, or maybe just I just want a bad guy because that's what these are about, good guys and bad guys, and they fight each other.
Is it really ironic that, like, arguably the show that, like, didn't need a proper bad guy, WandaVision, got a mustache twirling, cartoonishly evil villain that it didn't need, because the villain was, as we talked about, the villain was metaphorically grief and trauma,
right?
And the idea that if you're traumatized, you hurt other people, and that's not cool. But the show went, no, you need a clear villain, so here she is. And this show, which arguably, like, again, we talked, this is the much more typical show. This is the much more typically MCU show. This is the show that's arguably a movie spread over 6 hours. But it doesn't get a clear-cut villain. It gets a bunch of various protagonists who wear the hat of villain when the episode requires it. So, like, John Walker is monstrous, as, like, he caves your man's chest in with the shield. But then he goes back to being jokey. Hey, honey, we made it. I'm going to be a Dark Avenger. It's going to be great. And Carly goes from being like, yeah, but my surrogate mother died. I was just trying to, like, find medicine for her, too. Burn them alive. Burn them now.
And wasn't it like almost right after that she apologized to John Walker when he showed up? Oh, we didn't mean to kill your friend.
Yeah. and like John Walker, like, Black Lives Matters her, which is very weird.
Right.
It's like I like literally went, what, when he did that? He's like, are you saying Lamar's life didn't matter?
Oh Jesus, I didn't even put that together. That makes it worse.
He absolutely did. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Part of me expected, like, Carly to just stop and go, whoa. Like, time out. Okay, look, we're in the middle of something here, but we need to have a conversation, Mr. Walker.
Oh my God. Yeah, like it was, and the thing is, I said last week that I didn't mind if the messages got muddled, but this was a little too far, because like they were flipping and flopping like back and forth the whole time.
Yeah.
And like they really ended up in completely different positions when, like, Carly needed a redemption arc for the things she did. And she didn't really get that. Like, as she was dying, she said, I'm sorry. Like, what? Why? Like, why are you sorry now? Because you're dead? I don't understand. And then John Walker faces those consequences and gets to run off into the sun with his new black U.S. agent suit. So,
right? No, John Walker even gets, like, John Walker gets that shot where, like, you know, he has to decide, is he going to go on the path of revenge or be a good guy? He gets a full redemption where he's the good guy again. It's where he saves people. Forward,
no
he's
real reason.
Good.
Yeah, no, like, it's not really articulated why. Like, there's never a moment, like, where Lamar's parents say, like, Lamar would have sacrificed himself to save anybody, and he goes, wait a minute, maybe I learned something from that. Maybe I should internalize that. But there's no moment like that. It's literally just like, well, guess I'm a hero now.
It was bad. But speaking of just, you know, more random villains, it turns out that Sharon Carter is legitimately a power broker, right? Like, just flat out, they tell you the episode before. It was kind of so obvious we didn't want to believe it, but then she just shows up and she's a power broker, and it's dumb, it's bad. I hate it.
They still could pull the BS, like she was actually working for the power broker, not the power. But fuck that. Like, all the information they have given us is, yes, Sharon is the power broker.
Yeah, because I was about ready to come on here and congratulate you guys and put my hands up and say I was totally wrong. Last week I was very skeptical. I was like, they haven't done a hero-villain flip, so I guess they have now.
Mm-hmm.
But part of me is like, I want to put this and write it down and have it on the internet so that, like, 5 years from now, when Marvel finally get around, like, they're doing Secret Invasion. The sequence with Val at the end of this suggests they're doing, like, Dark Reign, Dark Avengers, where it's like, we don't need a Captain America. We need a U.S. agent. It's like, we don't need an Avenger. We need a Dark Avenger who wears black. But, like, that feels very much like that's what they're heading towards.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me is waiting for the moment in, like, Dark Avengers where Sharon Carter, the power broker, has her big moment and she's supposed to execute Sam or Bucky. And she's like, you didn't really think I was. I've been Nick Fury's man on the inside for 5 years now. Yeah. That's what I'm waiting for down the line. Probably won't happen. I'm just putting it down here so that if it does, I can call myself, like, ahead of the game.
They left themselves out. Yeah.
If they do that, like, I can't imagine that would be satisfying in any way. Cause like I've been saying, like, since the beginning of this show, like, Sharon Carter has been just relegated to the margins of every situation since the beginning of the series, right? Like, no one actually cares about Sharon Carter or what Sharon Carter's doing. Like, matter of fact, her most impactful moments throughout the show don't belong to Sharon Carter. They belong to her alias, the power broker. So, like, who gives a shit about Sharon Carter? For her to then get some kind of, oh, now she's the bad guy. No one really cared. It was disappointing to learn that she was the bad guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If she then flips back and like, oh, I was a good guy all along, who's going to care about that? It's Sharon Carter we're talking about here. Like, that's not enough. Like, if they were going to do that with anyone, it should have been with someone we cared more about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this just seems needless.
Yeah.
But if they did it with someone we cared about, though, you'd have fan backlash online. You'd have people going, "Man,
hell yeah!"
I didn't say that.
I'm doubling down. Fuck them. Just make an interesting
Yeah, like,
story.
make it
Fuck those
interesting.
fans.
Yeah, like tell a good story. Like, those fans will survive. They'll be okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So Sharon's a power broker.
I mean, like,
Zemo has a radio. Yeah. Why would they give Zemo a radio? Why would they do that?
So he
I
would
do
know
love-
that his plan worked, Jack.
Yeah,
Duh.
obviously. I mean, it's like, well, we can't give him any more copies of Machiavelli or chess. Those are on the list of prohibited items for supervillains. It's like, no, they're too cliche. I'm afraid you're going to have a radio, Mr. Zemo. Like, I love that they obviously brought Brule back and just shot him on this set for like a day, presumably, of him just sitting down and putting his feet up. What I will say, actually, we should probably talk about things that we liked about this episode, because it sounds like we have been rather down on it. I really liked the Isaiah Bradley stuff. In particular,
Yes.
I liked the ending and the incorporation of Bradley into the history of Captain America. Like, that was a really touching moment for me. And the moment where, like, Bradley's watching on TV and he's seeing Sam give the speech and he kind of tears up. Carl Lumbly, fantastic actor, massively underrated actor. That moment where, like, he's like, I was wrong. You know, I was, you know, when I made my point, I was, and you know, I was also right. Let's be entirely clear. But my point was valid, but I can understand now why he would do it. And I kind of endorse him doing it, despite the way that I felt about it last episode. I thought that stuff was really touching. And, you know, we've been rather cynical. We've been rather jaded, but sorry, I'm not tearing up. I just had something in my throat. But no, I felt like that was very earned. I felt like that was legitimately earned and kind of moving, and like what the show needed to do. And like, if that moment felt true to enough people, I can't really begrudge the show its issues, as it were, you know?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like that, I actually did tear up during those final moments. Like just them paying attention and importance to the fact that there are so many people whose stories have been erased for the purposes of, you know, selling, you know, this fake dream, this fake narrative of what America is, and ignoring the people who actually built it. Like Sam actively trying to restore part of that history, albeit, you know, it's a fictional version. It still meant a lot. Like that, like we very often don't get that in real life. So even to see it in a story like this still means a lot. Like it's at the very least, someone out there understands how important that is. And the hope would be that someone watching this will then think about that, I guess, going forward. Because, like, yes, it's corny that Sam had to, you know, talk at a bunch of powerful white, etc. people and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I hate to feel like the moral of the story is like, make sure you guilt enough people with power into doing the right thing, because that's probably like not the best way to go about things. But it is a strategy.
Ask nicely.
Right. Like that's pretty much what they're saying, right?
Right.
And like on
Don't ask
the
too
surface
firmly.
level,
Yeah, don't ask too. Don't steal any vaccines, even if you're going to sick people. Just ask for your vaccines.
yeah, like on the surface level, it seems like, well, F this message, but it's part of it. Like it is part of it. It's not the whole solution, but it is part of it. Like some people have to do exactly that. And maybe it shouldn't be, you know, the standout piece of the media, but I still appreciated how they went about it. Like I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
I just want people to be cautious of thinking like, oh, this is the actual solution, because as we mentioned earlier, like the show really didn't offer any kind of concrete solution to all the problems that it presented, because it doesn't know.
Yeah, nobody knows. If we knew, we would have solved them, is the thing. Like, that's
Right.
like Casey's entirely right. He said it earlier on. Like, you know, it's like, are we expecting this show to solve racism? And it's like, that feels like that's a little bit unreasonable. Like, you know, we talked about
Disney has the money. Disney could do it. Come on.
Yeah, I feel like we were going into WandaVision. It's like, is this show going to blow our mind? And that's an unrealistic expectation. But Falcon and the Winter Soldier, now let me tell you what we planned for that. No, it's a very, very fair point, and to give it credit. And I think, like, actually, to bring back to what Casey said there, I think, like, that's a very interesting argument about like the Isaiah Bradley stuff, because it is about the battle over history and writing people back into history. And it's like, and that is arguably the one thing that pop culture can do. Like we joked about like it can't solve racism because racism is an actual problem in the real world. But one of the things that like media has been able to do, and like to pick an example, Watchmen. From 2019, the limited TV show.
Yes, yeah.
That opened with the Tulsa massacre, the Tulsa riot.
Black Wall Street, absolutely.
Black Wall Street, basically. And no, like, okay, and I'm not going to say nobody, because that's a very white privilege. That's my John Walker moment, where I say nobody knew about that. But, like, I didn't know about that, and I think a lot of white Americans in particular didn't know about that. And as a result of that show documenting that event and confronting that event, it actually, like, ended up, like, first of all, you know, Tulsa itself started putting up monuments to it, acknowledging that it was a thing that happened. It ended up on several curriculums around the states as well as a direct result of this. So it actually does have like an impact in terms of realizing how you talk about history. And again, that's arguably one of the big, and I hate the term culture war, but it's the most literal form of culture war, is like what we talk about history. Things like, say, that was it the 1619 Project from the New York Times, and like the Trump White House is kind of written with crayon, like 1776 Project, which was like, nah, kind of like response to it. But like that moment really worked.
I would like to think that was like that was like the subtitle is like the 1776 Project : nah.
I think that somebody ran it through like a plagiarism engine online, and it was just like, yeah, all of this was just copied from weblogs, because of course it was. But sorry, not to derail it too much, but like that stuff, like, to give the show credit, I think it's doing that stuff, because Bradley is like a stand-in for all of the servicemen who were forgotten and erased from history. And he mentioned like the Red Tails last week, and actually seeing that acknowledged and realized on screen, I think anyway has value. But like, I worry like I've sounded like I've been harsh and mean about the show. I don't mean to be. I think it does some stuff very, very well.
No, and even like, you know, like I think that's an incredibly valid point, but even within the universe is, you know, Isaiah like being this counterbalance to Steve Rogers, this, you know, like, you know, yin and yang of the new Captain America, of like the actual duality that Sam now has to embody to be a Black Captain America, to be the Black Falcon. He, which by the way, just as another positive note, during the fight scene is that guy recording him on the phone going, "Hey, look, it's Black Falcon." That legitimately made me laugh, and I really enjoyed that. It was a little hokey when the other guy said, "No, that's Captain America," and it's like, wait, how do you know that guy in the street? But that doesn't matter.
I mean, he is wearing the literal American flag and holding Cap's shield. I feel like it's not that much of a reach.
I suppose. But
who's this mysterious man wearing the stars and stripes and carrying Captain America's shield?
But
and also, like, we recognize him as his buddy, well.
I think that's fair. But no, just from a character perspective, is now we have this multitude of influences that Sam is being inspired by. I think that's also like adding a depth to his character that Steve didn't have, that a lot of the Avengers or a lot of the main cast didn't have.
Yeah, and the luxury of having like 6 episodes to explore that. This is a nitpick. This isn't a serious point, although maybe it is, but it's not. It's not actually a serious point. But I did laugh. I did laugh out loud at the moment where, like, Sam can't secure a bank loan for his sister, right? He can't get her a bank loan to fix a boat. But he can get Sharon Carter a pardon. I love that. I kind of love that, where he's like, "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten." And then literally in the middle of the end credits, like, "Oh, by the way, he didn't forget that this is the juice that Cap has. Can't get a bank loan, but can get a pretty white lady a pardon."
Could that be, and this is me absolutely making up bullshit that is not real, could that be part of the metaphor of Sam now accepting his role and therefore being able to work within the system?
I want a post credit scene where he just goes to the bank in uniform and like gets a selfie with the guy, because the guy wants a selfie. He's like, "Yep," and then just gets approved. I feel like it would undermine the entire message of the series.
That would be real sad.
He should get a selfie with the guy, but then just walk out of the bank and be like, "I'm not banking here anymore." That could be that'd be a fun little comeuppance. Yeah,
I'm moving my business across the street, and
right, that could
with
be
this
fun.
America One credit card.
After I shave with some Gillette razors.
No, that's a different franchise. That's Ben Affleck's Batman.
I want to say, wasn't that was a big deal in Ultron?
In Justice League.
Or in
Oh, okay.
Ultron, right? Remember, like, Mark Ruffalo was shaving with Gillette razors.
And they had the, like, recognizable tins as well. But it's the sequence in, like, Zack Snyder's 4-hour Justice League. Like, it's really weird that the moment I remember is the loving 2-minute, like, Ben Affleck shaves with a Gillette razor moment. Like, even the product placement in that movie is kind of shot in the true Zack Snyder style. Like, I would argue that Gillette razor looks better than Sam Wilson's costume. It's just better shot.
Well, those Gillette
shot.
razors do look like cool androids. So, I mean, that's what they were in the commercials, right? They were just robots fighting each other.
Yeah, but not aliens or wizards.
Right? Yeah, these weren't any of the big three, so I guess they weren't that big a deal.
All right, checking through my notes here. To wrap up overall, obviously this is a really short season wrap up. I think we're going to come back next week and do a full, like, how we feel about the full season now that we've seen it all. At least that's what our editor-in-chief asked us to do. Who knows if we're going to listen to him? We barely do. But
Next week we'll be talking about Iron Man 3.
Oh, fuck, yes. I really want to. It's my favorite.
I do. I really want to do. Anyway, sorry.
But anyway, my short season wrap up is like, I think it started off on a good foot, tripped and limped most of the season, ended up above my expectations overall. Like, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend, like, and I'm a person who has seen every single Marvel television
You've seen
show.
the Inhumans.
I've watched the Inhumans miniseries. That's how deep I am into this. But
I don't from the black.
I don't know if I would like recommend this to people. Like a WandaVision is like, oh yeah, watch it. It's weird. It's like this homage to old television. It's kind of fun. Has some interesting ideas. This overall is like, a little up, like a higher register. So like C+.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I said I'm going to alienate everybody in the comment section. I apologize for this. I know that, like, the Captain America trilogy is like the crown jewel of the Marvel cinematic franchise, according to a lot of people. Never really liked it. They were the 3 movies that never really worked for me at all, which is unfortunate. But that does mean that Falcon the Winter Soldier becomes my favorite Cap adjacent project in the MCU by default, which is great. The 2 sweetest words in the English language, default. No, I quite like this. It, again, my expectations going into this were low, which is probably why it had the opposite effect of WandaVision, where my expectations for the first episodes were high, and then it kind of ended up where it did. I almost had the exact opposite arc of Jack, where Jack was like, started strong, and then got weak. I was like, started got really interesting, but slightly oddly paced and unstructured and kind of hazy, but full of interesting ideas, and then kind of ended. So yeah, probably somewhere around there. I liked it more than I expected to going into it, which is probably quite high praise. I think it tackled with big ideas in a way that is commendable. I think it did more than I expected a Disney Marvel product to do.
I can agree with you there.
To give absolute credit where credit is due. Malcolm Spellman, I think, is the executive producer, the guy we talked about at the start of the season, and he's hinted that there might be a second season, and I would absolutely watch it. I would hope that it would be. My big issue with the season is that, and we'll talk about it next week, is that so much of it is about what Captain America isn't. So he's not John Walker. He's not Carly Morgenthau. He's not Baron Zemo. He's not any of these other things. What is he then? Tell me what he actually is. And I feel like the show doesn't get there this season. So I would hope maybe next season, with all that out in the way, they can say, yes, this is what Captain America is. So yeah, no, I liked it, didn't love it, had some serious reservations that we spent about 40 minutes of this podcast talking about. That's my take.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. I would definitely recommend it to people who are like just fans of Marvel in general, but I personally did like it, like kind of from beginning to end. It's not the best thing I've seen in Marvel. I feel like I was also shocked that they went there with this property.
Yeah.
Like they really paid attention to the fact that they were making Captain America a black man and what that meant, which I'm very appreciative of. But like, it's not actually the first time Marvel has looked that deeply at race relations, because they did it in Black Panther, right? And that was kind of what set that movie apart from like pretty much everything they've done up until then. Like they really had a real world link to like the story it was telling in a way that I feel like really resonated with anybody, like not just Black Americans or Africans and whatnot, just anybody. And so like they're doing it again. I would kind of call Falcon and Winter Soldier a closer sequel to the Black Panther movie than like the Captain America ones, in all honesty, like just with the way it's theming everything.
Absolutely. I can see that.
But yeah, like kind of off the strength of that lineage, I would absolutely recommend it. Like I'm not gonna say I loved it, but I did like it a lot. And its crown jewel is that it made me respect Anthony Mackie. Because I did not until this show. So
that might be the best selling point for the series. You've flipped Casey on Anthony Mackie as an actor.
he did it. I mean, Sam Wilson still can't fight, but still, that's not what's important.
Sam Wilson can't fight, but Anthony Mackie can act. I will say, actually, before we go, I did like the closing montage. Like the parts of the show that I really liked were the parts that were furthest from like superheroing. So things like the boat montage last week, and then the training montage last week, and like Bucky with the kids and the cake. It's like, that's the Bucky I want. Or where he's conversing and he's holding the kids up on his metal arm and stuff like that. Like that's you have the format of like these miniseries, which are longer. Use the Netflix bloat to have a little bit of fun with it, you know? Use the streaming bloat to do stuff like that. Give me Bucky wrestling with kids over a cake. Give me Bucky redecorating a like shrimp boat like he's starring in Forrest Gump. Give me like all that stuff. That's kind of like, I really like that aspect of it as well, I will say.
Oh, if I can just add before we finish, because we really did kind of skimp over Bucky entirely for this discussion. But like he finally did kind of finish out his arc by, you know, going back and talking to Yori and telling him about the son. And I'm just curious what you guys think that represents, because it kind of felt to me like Bucky's journey was kind of the embodiment of like white guilt. Like he's an assassin who wasn't entirely responsible for his actions in the past, but kind of has to face the consequences of them today.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
And like him actually doing the work, as Sam told him to do, to go and confront it and basically own up to whatever part he's played in it. Like, yo, it wasn't me technically, but it was me. It was me in the past. Whatever way you want to internalize it. Like that kind of seemed like a concrete message that they were telling people, hey, like this is something you can do to kind of help this kind of situation. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think like in any situation, what they always say is the first step that you have to do is just admit what the problem is. And that is what Bucky was doing, is like, oh, I had this problem and I was dancing around it. You know, I wasn't really, I wasn't amending, I was avenging, right? I was dancing around my problem. So he finally said, yes, he was honest about his problems. I think that's a great read, by the way.
Yeah, that is a really, really ingenious read, actually.
Yeah.
What I will say, two things about Bucky. First of all, Casey's entirely right. And like anything that I say after this is not strong criticism of it. I did actually, one of the things I really loved about that apology sequence, and it's something that the MCU doesn't do very often, so I think it deserves credit for doing it here, is that sequence afterwards where he's walking by the restaurant and he looks in the window and he sees his old buddy. And his old buddy's talking with the waiter, and Bucky stares in and she stares at him, and she doesn't gesture for him to come in. She doesn't go out to him. Bucky just understands that it's not all good immediately. It's not perfectly fixed. The fact that it's good that he made the step, but he's not immediately forgiven, and he's not privileged to be forgiven. Like, it's not their job to absolve him of that, which is like, no, but it's a really, like, one of my big issues with, like, the MCU is the fact that, like, you know, like, at one point, Rhodey ends up, like, breaking his back, and then in the next movie, he's like, yeah, sure, let's all hang out together. There's no bad feelings whatsoever about it. I kind of like that it's like, no, sometimes there are bad feelings, and that's okay. You got to work through it, because that's part of what we call adulting, as a term, which is a term that I'm sure Bucky now knows about, having moved into the future. The second thing that I will say, it really felt like the show had no idea what to do with Bucky during most of this episode. There's the moment, and I'm not sure if I love it or I hate it, but the moment early on where he's handed a phone and it's like, it's Carly, and you're like, wait, these characters have no real connection to one another. They haven't really interacted before. Why is Carly talking to him on a phone? And it turns out that she's talking to him to distract him so the car can get away so Bucky won't run and stop it. But it also feels very much like, oh yeah, because Carly's worked her way through talking to most of the rest of the cast. So it's like, I guess I have to have a conversation with Bucky. Can't figure out why I would have a conversation with Bucky. Let's just hope that it stalls him and slows him down. And there's a sequence, at the end where like they're chasing the kids through the tunnels and like the path splits and like, you know, they're like, they split up and Walker's like, I'll take care of it. And like Bucky's like, feck it, I've got nothing to do in this scene. I'll go with him. I'll take care of this. You go do your stuff. My arc's wrapped up. Yeah. I'm gonna be which I kind of like. Like again, it's very honest. Which I like. It's like we have no idea what Bucky's doing here. So just have him hang out with Walker. Walker's still got an arc, right?
Yeah, like they definitely, and like
it's Walker's idea to use the app, if I remember correctly. It's not even Bucky's idea.
Oh, I don't know if they I don't think they specified. But well, because Bucky's the one who had the phone.
Good
point.
But
I do think like you said, like give us some of that amble. Like that the streaming services means you get time to play with your toys, and even during that back and forth, I wrote this down specifically because I thought it was a real missed opportunity where Carly says, you know, you've never fought for anything bigger than yourself. And he has like a little glibby throwaway line, but he, you know, like the real answer should have been like, bitch, I fought Thanos twice. Not only that, I was in World War II. Like I have fought for things bigger than myself way more times than you have. And so like they just left that character moment laying on the floor there.
I think he did say that he fought in World War II.
No, he said he did it twice. He lost twice.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, he said he fought in 2 wars and lost twice. And honestly, I feel like Carly said that knowing exactly that, and that his reaction would be, hey, whippersnapper, let me tell you a thing or two.
That's what I wanted. I wanted a whippersnapper.
Boomered him. She greatest generationed him. It's like, what's his weakness? His weakness is he loves to talk about how much he's worked. It's like, that'll be fantastic. We can make an escape. We'll just get him to pontificate about how hard his fucking life is. I love that he loses because he's not an Aaron Sorkin character. If he could walk and talk at the same time, they'd be screwed. And I love Sharon Carter's "You had one job." It's
right. But like, I wanted a little more playfulness in that moment. I think that could have been really fun. But no, I think like going back to like Casey's read on this situation of just like, yes, there are so many people living right now that don't think racism exists anymore. And so it's just like, if we're going to fold Bucky into the theming of the show and his acceptance of his past is along with that theming, brilliant. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they were going for or if they just needed to tie up Bucky's thread.
It could be two things.
I'll accept it.
They could have done it twice. They could have passed twice.
Everybody, thanks for watching and or listening. We will be back next week as we talk more and more about the full season. Now that we get it all, maybe we'll binge it and see if things make more or less sense. In any case, my name has been Jack Packard, once again for The Escapist.
I'm Darren Mooney, looking forward to have a cold take on the Winter Soldier next week.
Ooh. I am KC Wosu. Scrap that. Let's talk about Iron Man 3. Let's do it.
Yes! Okay, here's why the Mandarin was actually the best.